Our brains are uniquely complex. Our unique brains set us apart from all other animal instincts. We are not born, however, with all the abilities to assess fully the world around us. As children, there's an expectation that through the nurtured life we live, through the love that's given to us by our parents, carers, schools, we grow up to become all-rounded adults with confidence, the belief that we can conquer the world, do anything. The brains are solely a contributing factor for this. But what if our brains have been interrupted by a level that is not so nurturing, and we didn't grow up with that confidence to strive in this world? What chemicals are responsible for letting us or enabling us to bounce back? Don't go anywhere. I'm Toya Nukanuga. I am your inspirational mindset expert on adverse childhood experiences. Yes, adverse childhood experiences. And you might wonder what qualifies me to talk to you today about this topic. Well, firstly, I'll say that in addition to the courses on psychology that I'm taking, which encompass mental health and young adults, maltreatment of children, adversity in childhood, as well as introduction to cognitive psychology. Now, they are all theoretical, but I will say in addition to those, I've had so many years of research into the brain, into what goes on as human beings if they've been abused, and most importantly, how this affects us as we become adults. But most importantly, why this is at the core of my being is because I went through the most horrific adverse experiences as a child. From the age of 8, I was drastically taken away from my foster parents in the UK with little or no notice. I was taken to Nigeria. There's nothing wrong going back to Nigeria, your motherland. But in my case, I went from being totally traumatized from not ever seeing my foster parents again from when I'd been with them from 2 months old till I turned 8, and then going to Nigeria and facing more adverse events in my life. And including those adverse events was sexual abuse. So I was sexually abused from the age of 12 until I turned 15 from a very close family member. And so you can imagine that I had a choice of either growing up to have learned hopelessness or learned optimism. But I'm thankful today to say that I chose the latter. So through my thorough intentional steps of healing and not allowing that power that I thought I'd lost to be totally taken away from me and for it to destroy my life, I'm now here to help others come through the way I did. And that's one facet to my healing. The other aspect to it is the fact that I want to slash shame on the head and for us to help children who are still out there suffering sexual abuse and all other horrific events that could damage them for life when they grow up. And some, sadly, won't make it. to become adults. They will sadly choose a path that we'll see will take them down a slippery slope, and they will take their lives. And that's not me saying or hoping for the worst, but we see it every day. And so that's why it's dear to my heart, because I believe that every child deserves to be safe. First, they need to be safe at home. So today, my topic is claiming your brain power back. Yes. Now I've got my notes here because most of it is quite academic, and I want to make sure that everything that I tell you today is researchable, and you can see from the links below that you can check the links to see the validity of my research. And so the first thing I'll say, read out here, is to say recent studies have shown, for example, that people who specifically experience childhood abuse or neglect can suffer from distorted neurotransmitter development. Underdeveloped oxytocin pathways are usually discovered, which greatly affects the ability to feel loved, positivity, happiness, and closeness to others. The low levels of serotonin were found in these children when a research was conducted, and this ultimately leads to depression. So today it's more about not just letting the naysayers know that these things are scientifically proven, but just to say to you, if you're out there and you're very self-critical, that it's not your fault, it wasn't your fault, and you can heal, because it's scientifically proven that if you did undergo those events, it's actually because of the chemicals that were not balanced or released and balanced in your brain that has resulted in you being in a depressive state. So, of course, our formative childhood years are times for when we learn, and the neurons that will wire and fire together are there to snatch new things and create new events in our lives. And as we learn good things, we form new connections in our brain. But what if we don't learn good things along the way, or we learn things that are external and have harmed us? So nurturing times were not so nurturing for me as a child growing up from a particular within a particular time. So we know that, again, I've got my notes just to read out. We know that traumatic experiences suffered in a childhood can alter the production of neurotransmitters. And as I mentioned in another video of mine, the neurotransmitters such as dopamine and serotonin. So as we know, serotonin, for example, is connected to mood and sleep patterns. Low levels are linked to depression and insomnia. And hormones, on the other hand, which is another vital chemical in the brain, such as oxytocin, cortisol, and insulin, are vital in brain development. So oxytocin, often called the cuddle hormone, is responsible for those warm and fuzzy feelings which help us feel closer to others, encourages socialization, and regulates stress. So if we have undergone things that are very adverse, we will be underdeveloped in those ways. And it's vital that we now as adults, if we've healed or in the medical practice space, that we create that awareness that these are real. These are not made up things. They are neurological facts, biological facts, scientifically proven, that what we have undergone as a child stays with us due to the chemical imbalance of our brains. and we need to be intentional. I got intentional with my healing, and nothing was going to stop me. No culture, no loyalty, nothing. My healing process will be complete. So, and I go on here to saying dopamine receptors which weren't properly formed were also found. So this again was due to was as a result of the research that King's College London did. So of course there's some other variables that I did read that I'm not bringing here. So obviously everything's not set in stone, as we know. It's all developing, and as we learn we get to know that other things change. But so far, when the dopamine receptors were checked, we realized that they weren't properly formed in those people who had undergone adverse experiences, which dramatically changes the way someone would experience pleasure and happiness. And I'll add to that, it also, in my experience, took me to a place where I had no will to live, and that is obviously a key contributing factor of someone who's undergoing things that are stressful. You just want to end it. And dopamine, which is a motivational drive, will not be there. So obviously I was not releasing the chemical in my brain to make me feel motivated. I would shut down, I would dissociate, like I'm sure others would. So as I said before, the dopamine, it helps nerves to send messages to each other. It's produced by a group of nerve cells in the middle of the brain and sends out messages to other parts of the brain. So dopamine is released when your brain is expecting a reward. It's a cycle of motivation, reward, and reinforcement. So I'll stop there just to say that these are the chemicals that are vital for brain development of a child. Now, also, as I mentioned, serotonin is vital for sleep, for mood, and all other things that will help us develop properly. Growing up, I had very little sleep due to the experiences I had. I would probably have 3 to 4 hours, and that lasted for many, many years. And so you can imagine that I wasn't getting sufficient nutrients and chemicals in my brain, which also led to me not learning properly or reading for hours on end, but not getting very far academically. But I'll talk to you about that. So that's just a little bit about what I want to talk to you about, and just to know that there's also evidence to suggest that if you have undergone these things and you're not getting sufficient chemicals, it would lead to psychosis, and it is devastating. Apart from the devastating violation of our body and everything else, it's just pure horror when you go through that. But I'm here to say that if we adapt the learned optimism and not learned helplessness, we can overcome this. So, right, there are links below for you to get further help, but also if you want to reach out to me, you can get in touch with me via my website. And yes, I would love you to continue with me on this journey and subscribe to Hush to Raw. And yes, I release videos Tuesdays and Fridays. Let's do this. And I want to say that if you're out there and you're feeling helpless, please seek help. But let's try and start eating well, looking after ourselves. Look after you. It's not selfish. Self-care is not selfish. Look after you. You deserve it. I love you. And remember, your inner child has a voice. Don't suppress it. Let it roar. Thanks for watching. See you next time.